We at OrthoHub are excited to be hosting this global webinar with the International Orthopaedic Diversity Alliance. We have many shared goals, so it's a privilege to be partnering up today. Many of you are new to OrthoHub, so just briefly, you can find us online at www.orthohub.xyz, where our goal is to provide freely accessible interactive orthopedic education for all. We are across all the social media platforms, so please do follow us there. And do subscribe to our YouTube channel. There's quite a lot of brand new video content.
So Laurie Hiemstra is based in Banff in Canada, and she will be talking about the Canadian experience. Thank you, Laurie.
Hi, thanks very much. Good morning, everyone. It is morning here in Western Canada, but thank you very much for inviting me to present today. Both to IODA and to OrthoHub. It's a real honor, and I really feel like we're coming together as a group, and I think the best part is that we're making friends with each other around the world. It really is an amazing group, and I'm very proud to be part of it. So I've been asked to share today what's been going on in Canada in orthopedics with regards to diversity, and I'm going to be concentrating mostly on gender diversity, but we'll talk a little bit about the other minorities also. Just to introduce myself, I am an orthopedic surgeon and I specialize in sport medicine, knee ligament reconstruction, and I live in Banff, which is in the Rocky Mountains in Canada, where it is almost 6 o'clock in the morning. So I am proud to be from Canada. Canada is a large country, and in fact is the second largest country in the world. In fact, there are, from east to west, 4.5 hours of time zones. So the challenges of time zones are not new to us in Canada. But we are big in size and we are big in heart, but we are not big in population. And so similar to Australia, in which we do have some kinship, we have 37.5 million people in Canada, and most of those are spread right along that southern border, which is right next to the United States, which is our big brother that we really love to share with, but also stay independent from. So these are some of the challenges we face in Canada. We do have 2 official languages, English and French. However, Canada really prides itself in being a multicultural country. We have over 250 ethnic groups in Canada, and like myself, many of us are first-generation Canadians who immigrated from many different countries. My parents immigrated from Holland after World War II. Canada is also very beautiful, and we have a lot of nature and actually boast more than 50% of the natural lakes in the world. And depending on which definition you use, we get the North Pole. So with regards to orthopedics, there are almost 1,700 orthopedic surgeons in Canada. These are 2019 stats, so fairly recent. And if you do the math, this translates into about 3.7 surgeons per 100,000 people. And although that number itself may not have too much meaning for everyone, it does indicate that we are actually very underserviced in orthopedics in Canada. And in fact, that number, 3.7, is the lowest number of surgeons per capita of the G7 countries. Of those 1,700 surgeons, 13% are female. So just to put that into context, like the US and Australia, for many years now, half of our medical school classes have been female. If you look at all the physicians in Canada, about 42% are female. So even if you look at the world stage, and the IODA papers have shown that Canada actually fares fairly well with regards to the number of female orthopedic surgeons, really we have a long way to go. And like most countries, of all the surgical subspecialties, orthopedics continues to have the most challenges in catching up to gender equity. There is hope, however. Although progress is slow, the number of females in orthopedics is growing in Canada, and now over 1/4 of our residency positions are occupied by women. So things are looking much, much better. When you look at leadership positions, however, the numbers in Canada really mirror what is happening in the rest of the world. There are very few women occupying the higher level leadership positions. We will, however, in 2022, have the first ever female president of the Canadian Orthopaedic Association. I am sad to say that she will be the 77th president of the association and still the first woman. But finally, things are coming along. In the last 3 years, great strides have been made for gender diversity within orthopedic surgery in Canada. It was in 2017 that the first woman was selected onto the executive of the COA. And with this, an initiative was started to specifically and methodically raise awareness to improve gender diversity in Canadian orthopedics. That initiative has been rapidly gaining momentum, and that's some of this stuff I want to share with you today. And many of it will mirror a lot what Jenny talked about and Andrew talked about what's happening in Australia. So it's kind of nice to see that we're all following the same pathway. Canada may be a little bit different than some of these other countries, though, because the Canadian Orthopaedic Association doesn't control the residency programs. And we have powerful provincial organizations that really control a lot of the politics that happen in orthopedics in Canada. So our approach to leadership is somewhat siloed, which has been one of our biggest challenges in trying to advance national programs such as gender equity. So with so much work to do, where were we going to start? So we began a few years ago just starting some roundtable discussions. So we had an open invitation to anyone who wanted to come, male or female. And what we really wanted to do was take the pulse of everybody. We wanted to find suggestions and opinions on the direction that this diversity initiative should take. So we felt it was really important to hear what everyone thought was needed and what our priorities should be. It was clear right from the beginning, and as Deepa so perfectly said, that we were going to have to respectfully challenge the current thought on diversity in Canada and what people thought was right and wrong with our system, and if people even thought anything was wrong with the system. So education as to the issues and the definitions and all these concepts that are essential to understand gender diversity work was really a priority. So for the next 2 years, we laid the groundwork by introducing symposia at our annual general meeting, which is really our largest educational event in Canada for orthopedics. So the first year, like truly laying the foundation, we introduced the concepts of implicit bias, mentorship, and leadership. And it was really interesting to watch people's eyes open because I think nobody had really thought about these things yet in Canada. So we were really starting from that blank slate. Last year, we expanded. We wanted to introduce how the lack of diversity was not a problem with the women. We didn't have to fix the women. It was a structural and an organizational problem. We advocated for putting families first and well-being first and discussed the practices and habits that led to resilient leadership. We created and published a diversity statement, something that was sorely lacking. And this really publicly announced our intentions, I think mostly to our membership, that we were really taking this seriously, but also announcing it publicly that we were going to address diversity within Canadian orthopedics. Leadership, numbers in leadership being a problem, we established a scholarship fund. So this was given out to female emerging leaders and people who wanted some more leadership skills. And it really was to highlight the fact that we need to educate people so that they will take those leadership positions. And that's been continuing on. We created a strategic plan similar to the Australian Orthopaedic Association. We wanted to make a guideline and a roadmap on how we were going to address these things down the road. Obviously, we started with the low-hanging fruit, which is always the easiest, but these things were really missing in Canadian orthopedics, and so they really were a new thing. Mentorship was a huge issue, as everyone knows, and we had the goal of enhancing our mentorship opportunities, but also teaching people how to be mentors. It's all nice to come up to someone and say, I want you to be my mentor, but mentoring is a skill, and we really wanted to address this lack of maybe experience in knowing how to be an excellent mentor. We started small, and at our annual meeting, we started a Mentor for the Day program. So instead of requiring people to put a big, huge commitment in, they could commit for the day. And we tried to match mentees with mentors, and these were male and female. It didn't matter, and tried to match them for the day. So they could hang out with someone with more experience or an attending physician for the day and really see what was happening. They could talk about life, they could talk about work, they could talk about job prospects or anything they wanted to talk about. Encouraging female residents, medical students to go into orthopedics has always been a big challenge for, I think, everyone all around the world. we introduced a session at our annual meeting called Real Talk. And this had people in all stages of their career give a really informal symposium. And it was aimed at the university students and the medical students that were in that local city wherever our meeting is being held every year. So it's going to rotate around the country. And this really was directed to actively dispel all the myths that girls shouldn't or couldn't do orthopedics, and that's been super successful. Our gender diversity initiative really picked up speed last year. And as Jenny said, there's just too much work to do and not enough hands. So we created a task force to try to get some more things accomplished. Interestingly, the response to this was huge. Both male and female orthopedic surgeons were interested in becoming part of this task force. And that was really unexpected and really gratifying. So interestingly, the original intent of that was to just get a bunch of things done, but probably the most influential result of that task force was it really brought a big group of female orthopedic surgeons and male orthopedic surgeons who were he for she mentors and sponsors together. And it actually got us talking and brought us together as a cohesive group. We created a private Facebook group. So actually only female orthopedic surgeons in Canada may be part of this Facebook group. And that's been a really great resource. We had a private forum now to communicate with each other. We could throw on, I put this webinar on that. So the female orthopedic surgeons in Canada would know about this. We can communicate. We can ask each other questions, little questions, big questions. We could find mentors, share information, find advice, share experiences. We could vent, which happens sometimes, but we could support each other. We could also congratulate each other for our accomplishments. So gender diversity in Canada, to use an appropriate metaphor for me right now, has been like a snowball rolling downhill. It is really picking up momentum and size, and I hope, truly hope, that it will be unstoppable. This genie is out of the bottle in Canada, and she's not going back in. The momentum of this initiative will be the key to changing culture in Canadian orthopedics. We have bold plans underway to expand our leadership and mentorship programs. We have a very progressive project underway to specifically identify the barriers that exist to women in orthopedics and barriers that exist specifically in Canada. Knowing those barriers, being able to name them, is going to be the key to dismantling them. And finally, although in Canada, gender is our most obvious minority group, we are building intersectionality into all these initiatives as we move forward. In summary, I think Canada should be very, very proud of where we have come in the last few years. This doesn't, of course, mean that we don't have a long way to go. Gender equity is not quite around the immediate corner. And although we consider ourselves a multicultural country, Canada's Indigenous people are very poorly represented in our medical profession. Our system is still bound by the patriarchal tenets that it was created under, but that is slowly changing. I prefer to have my glass half full. Change is coming, culture is changing, and the future is looking much brighter than it did a decade ago. Thank you.
Thank you, Laurie, for such a positive talk and some really inspiring initiatives from Canada. I love the drill talk. That's a great one. So we have a question from Angel, Anna Mayen, and she wants to know, could you talk about the process of setting up an organisation which champions women in orthopaedics? How did you go about conceptualising and executing your vision and mission? And how did you overcome the challenges?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. And I think every country and situation will have a different answer. As I said, we're fairly siloed in Canada on who's in charge. So again, the part-time residency program thing, that's awesome, but the COA has no power over residency programs. So that's almost a non-starter for that organization. We had long discussions about this at COA. And what we felt is that we didn't particularly want a gender diversity committee. We wanted to try to organize the diversity initiatives to be run through all of the committees of the COA. So we didn't want to narrow it down and point it out. We really wanted it to trickle through everything. And so we really avoided trying to set up a diversity committee. We really tried to push those concepts from below, and so that they filtered through all the committees. I actually had to fight fairly hard for the task force, and it was mostly because I just needed to help getting stuff done. And there was a little bit of pushback, mostly for that reason, not because they didn't want me to have a task force, but they didn't want it to be so set apart. Does that answer that?
Thanks, Laurie. So we've got another question from Joanna Maggs, and she wants to know a little bit more about your Mentorship for a Day program. How did you advertise this and encourage people to sign up as mentees? And how did you actually do the matching between the mentors and the mentees?
Yeah, another great question. So we put out advertisements, email, and we have all the, e-newsletters and things that go out every week and every month to our membership. So we started advertising it. We also did some personal recruiting of people who we felt would be good mentors, but we basically asked people to volunteer to be mentors or mentees. We went online and we probably pilfered through the Ruth Jackson Society mentorship page and tried to make a questionnaire. And we actually had someone whose interest was in this at the COA head office try to match people up. So some of the questions were, do you really want to be matched with a female who has young children? Because some of your burning questions you want to answer are about when to have kids, childcare, how to balance life with young kids. Then we don't want to match you up with a 60-year-old man. So we asked questions as to what their main burning questions were and what they wanted mentorship on, and then we just tried to manually match them. We're much smaller than the United States, so we can do things like manually match. So
that sounds really interesting and quite difficult as well to match people up.
I think so. And I think, unfortunately, it was just getting running when COVID hit. And of course, we haven't been in person since then. So I think, it's probably going to be a few years in evolution to perfect it. But I think it was really quite successful. And some really great relationships. And I think longer term mentor-menteeships have been formed from that.
And then we've got another question from Denali. And they're asking about the private Facebook group, and this is a really good question. So how do you ensure this space also comes across as welcoming to non-cis women, e.g. transgender women and people who identify as women? And the question goes on to say that labelling something can make it quite difficult, and you don't obviously want to exclude anyone.
Fair enough. True. Again, our numbers are very small in Canada, and there are some of the non-traditional cis female people in charge of that Facebook group. Again, it's a bit of a challenge. How do you reach every single person you want involved in that Facebook group and get them to join? So we currently have something like 175 members, but it's probably more than half of the eligible members. So that is a challenge going forward that we have to ensure, but that certainly is the intent, to include all of those.
Great, thank you, Laurie, and thanks for the questions from all the attendees. Some quite challenging questions there. So